Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a few more moments as a couple of people trickle in, and then we'll get started.
Okay, I think I got everything loaded up. We should be good to go.
All right, yeah, it did look like some more people trickled in. Okay, so hello and welcome everyone to another one of our Cherwell technical deep dives. This one is going to be focusing on effective searching in Cherwell Service Management, recently acquired by Avanti. So my name is Tabitha Ishman, and I'm the marketing manager of Excalibur Data Systems, and just want to welcome you all to the webinar again today, and then just talk about a few logistics before we get started. So the lines are muted and the webinar is being recorded. The recording will be sent via email to all participants tomorrow. It'll also be available on our YouTube channel. We'll answer questions at the end in a Q&A session, but you can ask questions at any time during the presentation just by typing them into the question window. And now just a little bit about Excalibur Data Systems. We are a leading edge consulting firm guiding organizations through their digital transformation journey. We work with strategic partners and leverage best of breed enterprise service management technologies. In doing so, we help create next generation solutions for our customers. And I know we have a lot of great content to get to today. So to kick us off, I'd like to introduce Michael Estep, Senior Solution Architect and Consultant with Excalibur Data Systems. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, everyone. As Tabitha said, I'm Michael Estep with Excalibur Data Systems, one of the senior solution architects and consultants over here. As you can see from my bio, I've been around IT for a few years or two, and in the Cherwell platform for about 10 plus years. I started in 2010, so we're coming up on 11 years. And ITSM, pretty much done it all within a service desk or a help desk, either way you want to name it. And joining me here today, I've got Scott, and I'm going to let Scott go ahead and introduce himself.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Scott Valor, Senior Solutions Architect and Consultant with Excalibur as well. I've been around IT for a very long time in all kinds of roles, outside of IT service management as well, everything across infrastructure, international firms, you name it. I started about the same time as Mike with Cherwell, and I started as a customer just like him and have moved my way into the consulting space over the last, I'm in this probably about 6 years now as a consultant. So together we have a lot of experience around Cherwell, and we are excited to move on through and kind of show you what we've got going on with this webinar around searching. So we had a lot of questions around searching, you know, as we build systems and we talk with customers. So we thought we'd do more of a comprehensive conversation around searching, give you something that you can play back and pull some nuggets out of it, and hopefully share something with you that you haven't seen before. So what we're looking at here is doing kind of an overall overview of searching, what the search settings look like, kind of all of these items, as well as some limitations that you find when you're in the browser client. Like Tabitha said, if you have any questions, just holler as we go along. We'll try to stop and answer those as we go and keep them in context, as well as take stuff at the end. The browser client is a really nice tool and has come a really long way within the Cherwell ecosystem. Today, though, it still has a few limitations. We're just going to show 10.1.4 today, and in the current versions, you're unable to create these 4 items. You can't create new stored prompts, new stored expressions, new stored values, or create new metrics. You can use existing ones. So if in the rich client or in the admin client, you've created these items, you've created the stored searches and values and stuff in advance, you can leverage those in searches that you're working through in the browser client. However, you're unable to go ahead and create those while you're using the browser client. Everything else that we're going to show here, though, works both in the browser client as well as the rich client. All right, from here on out, everything we're going to do is going to be live. We're going to do it in the tool. and show you around as opposed to a bunch of PowerPoint slides. So you're going to see the context of how we got there. Going to start out in the admin tool and go through some of the settings that will affect search across your system. And so here we're going to go over to settings and go into edit system settings. Right here at the top, you'll find on search, there's 3 parameter sections here around text searching, quick search, and knowledge. And these are going to affect how searching works in your system within these 3 contexts. So first, when you're just doing saved searches and search queries that you're running, what happens? Are we searching all the words in a single field? Can we search words across different fields? And can I use different forms of the word? So this is definitely going to affect the context of your searching. If you change that, please let your users know what to expect so they're not surprised midstream. Quick search, again, all words or any. The way I've got it set right now is the out-of-the-box default settings. So this is the side quick search and also the top quick search that you can set up. And then the knowledge search, how does that work? All words or any. The next thing that I want to show you within the admin tool is within a blueprint, and that is how do I enable and modify the full text searching within an object. So out of the box, full text is on an incident and knowledge and things like that. But if I'm creating a new business object, how do I set that up? So just kind of show you where that exists here in the business object properties. Under searching, you'll have to come in and turn on this include full text search and set up the minimums here for the card search to display and for the quick search when you're in a linked view. And then after you've done that, you can then come over and edit any particular field. So like here, you'll see that category has full text enabled already. And that is the checkbox here at the bottom that tells you that you want to include this field in the full text search. Full text search specifically is if I'm searching on the quick search on the left, or I'm doing using a related item picker, or anything else that's going to do a deep dive search through the full object, it's only going to search the fields that are part of the full text index. So if you look at customer, you've got their name, their full name, their email address, their telephone number, their physical address, things like that are all part of the full text index, which makes it really easy when you're using a related item picker to find somebody, because it searches through that. All right, those are pretty much the core settings that you'll affect within the admin client. From there, we're going to go ahead and pop over to the rich client, and from here on out, we're just going to talk through how do I do searches, what do the controls look like, what are the different types of searches, and some of the limitations around them. So the first thing that I want to show is how to do some ad hoc searching and kind of what that looks like. So if I go up to do a quick search builder, and we'll just go ahead and pick some fields here out of incident. We'll just say that call source is equal to an email. And see how many records I get. So here I get just one record. And when you only get one record, it's going to go directly to that record versus just giving you a list of the records. But what's interesting about the ad hoc search is that I can edit that search. That took forever to load. That was fun. So here I've already got a search set. Now, in this case, I've just got one record. That wasn't really what I was looking for. So one of the options I have is to come up here. Now that I have search results, edit current search and save current search are available to me. I can go edit this current search and alter it and say, I don't want the ones that are closed. And maybe I also want to say that the call source could also be, say, phone. And now I get a totally different set of search results. And it doesn't matter whether I had double-clicked on a value on a dashboard and it gave me a list of results, or if I'd come over to the task pane and done a quick search here, anytime that I have a set of records, that has come back as a search result, and I can come up here and edit that current search, and I can tweak it and alter it. And then once I'm done, I can save that current search, so I can reuse it. And when I go to save this, we've got the standard stuff. But what really matters here is, where do I want to save it? What context? Is it just for me? Is it for my team? I'm just going to go ahead and put it in global. Where you can save it is purely based on your security constraints. So for the security group that I belong to right now, I'm an admin. I have all of these. You can limit your users as to which areas they can create new searches, and you do that through the constraints around the security group itself. So I'll go ahead and save that, and now that's part of my stored searches, and I can continue to use that or modify it and create additional searches. And so one of the real cool things to show your users, because a lot of people don't recognize that they can edit a search that they're already running. So like if I had pulled up a stored search, I could continue to edit that and then save that as something else. It's a nice thing to show off to other people and help them leverage the system a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Mike, and he's going to start talking about some of the features and settings here within actually creating and modifying searches.
Thanks, Scott. So this is what a stored query looks like. Whenever you save one, you're able to bring it up and look in the same way that you would look with the ad hoc. And then we're going to update it and possibly even save it after that once you get it to where you want to again. So let's just kind of talk through the basics that we have here. We've got a name at the top, so we can name the search what we want to. One thing to note here is that if you're naming a search, you can't name a search the same as another search. So make sure that those are unique names whenever you're putting them in there, because it will complain at you if it's not. And the next part of it is the description. So let's give it something that when somebody's looking at this search, they can tell what we're doing with it. Maybe the name has a pretty good description in it. However, maybe it doesn't, and we need to explain it a little bit more. So descriptions are also very important. In this particular type, we always make sure what context we're in. So if you look in the search type here, we're in an incident. So when you're updating those kind of things, you want to make sure that you're in the right context of whatever search that you're creating. That way, if you create a great search and you're like, oh man, now I got to switch context, and it just doesn't work that way. You've got to make sure you're right in the right context whenever you're doing these kinds of things. So let's go through the toolbar here real quick. I'm only going to touch that there is a new button, and the new button is to add things into your search. We're going to go through those comparison clauses and ownership clauses and all kinds of other different things that we can add here in just a moment, and kind of show you and build those a little bit of what we do with those. The next button, once you click on one of your queries that you put in here, you're able to delete them if you want to. So if it's not the right one that you had in there, you want to make another one. Or if you click new by mistake and I'm like, yeah, I don't want that one, you could then delete that particular one out, that clause. The next button over is a copy button, which is super useful, especially when you're doing these nested clauses. As you can see down here, we've got one that's got a couple of them down here where we're doing and at least one of the following is true. So clicking on this one, you'll notice it highlights the entire thing as yellow. So anywhere that you have yellow and you push this copy button, it's going to copy the entire thing and essentially repaste it right back into where you've got. The arrows that come next are once we've copied it and where we want to, we can move it up so we can make our nested clauses or move them back down into its own clause, etc. So as Scott's showing you there, we can kind of move them up and then we can move it back if we needed to, or back down a level, etc. Along with these two buttons down at the bottom right, we've got some up and down arrows. And the up and down arrows not only allow us to move the left and right, allows us to move up into the hierarchy, these allow us to move up and down within our search itself. So again, anything that's highlighted in yellow, if you do a single row, you're only going to move that one row. Or if you highlight an entire clause, you're going to do the entire clause, the entire group of things that you've got. So one thing to be careful on, just make sure when you're moving stuff around, etc., that you watch what is highlighted in yellow, because if it's the nested, you're going to move the entire nest and not just the one that's there. Next is pretty explanatory. It's the search results by. So when we run this particular query search, what do we want our list to be sorted by initially? As you know from the grid, we're able to resort by anything we want, group, etc. But what is it that I want whenever I run this search initially to sort by to begin with? And the next few buttons go along with that search. So when I search results by, in this case, incident ID, do I want them to be ascending or descending? Do I want the older ones first, or do I want the newer ones first? The other nice thing that's in Cherwell that's kind of recent, and it's the multiple columns. So not only can I sort by one column when I do the search, but it allows me to then do another search or another level of search within it, or sort within it. So if I were to add, incident ID, and maybe I want to see category would be my next within the sort, then we're able to put that within our sort as well as a multi-column sort. Each individual item also has that ability to sort ascending or descending individually, and we set that with this little double-headed arrow at the bottom. The green arrows, the up and downs, they'll move them within our sort. So in case I want category first, then incident ID, I'm able to move that in front, so that will sort first, and then the incident ID will sort. And the last two buttons on this bar, they really only pertain to one type of search, and that's a contain search. So if we add in a contain search here, just so that we can see what I'm talking about, it is a comparison, and it's the any field search within the business object. You'll see that it has contains. So anywhere that I have contains, and I have some words out here, do I want to be able to search all of the words together? So I need the stuff and things. Or do I want to search the words separately? So I'm looking for stuff, and then I'm looking for and I'm looking for things, and any of the fields within my business object. So those two circles up there, they're only for when you're doing a contain search, and they do not affect anything else within your search. The options we also have available down here at the bottom left. We see these options all over Cherwell, and they're pretty much the same most places that you go within here. So availability is similar to what Scott was showing when he was saying where to save it. So if we drop this one down, we'll again see that we've got user, role, team, and global, and those are anything that you have the rights, the security rights for. If we choose role, you'll notice association now becomes available, because role allows us to have what role that I'm in. I may be in multiples, as you can see here, at the IT service desk or service desk manager. Where do I want to put the search now? I may want to put it just under the manager role so that only the IT service managers can see it. Custom image. We use custom images here and there, not a whole lot that I've ever seen in a search, but it does give you a visible indicator of maybe grouping these searches together that you would have that do certain things. So this particular one, if we put a cog on it, instead of the magnifying glass that you're normally used to seeing, it'll change it to a cog. The current folder at the bottom really is just an FYI to let you know where the search is currently. So I'm finding this one now in global/demo. So if I were to exit back out of it, and I would remember where that was if I could see the options, etc. So that's what I've got to go through. I'm going to pass it back over to Scott, and he's going to go through that new button, and we're going to break down some of these clauses and see what we can find out about them.
Thanks, Mike. And yeah, the one of the really cool things about this current folder is if you've ever run a storage search and you forgot where you found that thing while you're in the middle of it because you've gone 12 folders down, this will help you figure out where you're at, because all you've got to do is go up and say edit the current search and hit options, and you'll go, that's where I found that thing, or that's where I stuffed it and I totally forgot where I dropped it. So can be a very useful piece. New button. So Mike went through everything we got up here, and we skipped the new button because this is the meat of building searches, and we wanted to kind of give them their due process. I'm going to start out and work my way down through the first couple here. We're going to talk about comparison clauses. And so everything that you see here is comparison clauses for the most part, where it's this equals that or it's not equal to that. So I've just added a new one. You'll notice though it went right after where I was highlighted. So it's right here. So if I didn't want that one there, but I really wanted it to kind of be up here, I could put it there and it'll put it in that context. Or if I want it here within this group, I can go ahead and click there and it'll add it within that. And again, as Mike showed, if that's not right, I can still move it around and position it where I want. So useful stuff. So in a comparison clause, we've got a variety of different things that we can do. And so the first thing I'm gonna do is just pick a field just to start us going on. And what you'll notice when I do that is that the comparator here has a list of items based on the fact that I picked a text field. If when I show you logical fields and some of the other types of fields, you'll notice that the list of comparators changes to be contextual for the type of data that you're doing. And in this case, one of the things that I wanted to point out here is, we have that it's equal to something, or it's not equal, or it's empty, or it has a greater than value. These are fairly straightforward. Mike had talked about contains. So if you do a contains, again, those two selectors up there will control how it searches. I want to talk about like. This is something a lot of people don't necessarily understand. Like is basically similar to a contains, but it allows us to say, does a fragment or a piece exist somewhere within this field? And the way that that works is if I say stuff here, that helps if I actually click in there when I type. Well, that's fun. It's not letting me type there right now. So let's go ahead and add a new one in again. We'll try this again. And we want to be like. Okay.
Try an unvalidated field.
Yeah. That would probably help a whole lot.
Yeah, Cherwell can be stingy at times.
And when you're doing one of these demos, sometimes you get, let's see here. Let's just go ahead and do, do location. There we go. Thank you. Always learn something new. All right, so when I'm doing a like, what's interesting about this is that if I were to do stuff here, it's going to look it's going to say that that field has to equal stuff because I've just done it without any wildcards around it. If I, however, want to say that I want it where stuff is at the end of a part of it, I can put the % as a wildcard. If I want to say that stuff is somewhere in it, I can put wildcards at both ends. If I simply want to say that stuff starts it, I can put the wildcard at the end. And so this will say that stuff is either the only thing there, or that stuff is in the middle of a word fragment or somewhere within the contents. Doesn't matter. One of the things that's really useful here is that I can have an attribute in my customer record or my user record, and I can bring that in a expression and wrap it with percents here and say that that's like a value within the incident where I might have, say, a comma delimitated list of values within the incident. And it goes, that value that you're looking for from the user happens to be in that list of data that's stored in that one record. And so maybe it's a country. So I'm in US and there's 3 different countries listed that this instance is valid for, and US is one of them. And so I'm allowed to find it in my search because I happen to have US there when I'm doing the like. So US from my customer record matches the list of comma values in location. And again, you can do not like as well. So the percentages are your wildcards when you're doing a like search. The next thing we want to do is at the very top, we alluded to it, so you can do in any field. So I can store within my stored search, I can say any field in here, whether it's not part of the full text or it is part of the full text, doesn't matter. This is just going to do a straight SQL query across all of the fields. So this can be really useful when you're digging for something that you're having trouble finding. And at this point, you'll notice it's just a contains. And so it's just a list of words or phrases controlled by this and or up here, and it's going to look at everything. If I were to choose a numeric field, you notice that I get a much smaller list because it's just a matter of equality. And then I'm going to pick a logical field just to go ahead and show what else happens. I get a much smaller list again because we're saying, does it equal, does it not equal? One of the things to remember when you're dealing with logical fields is that depending on how the field is set within Cherwell on the business object, you have to deal with nulls. So if I am allowing nulls to be held in that field within the business object, then a logical comparator has 3 values. It has true, it has false, and has null. So when I'm dealing with a logical field, and I had missed it earlier, that's why I had such a big list. When I've got a logical field, if I want to know whether it is true, I can say it's equal to true. But if I want to know whether it's false or potentially null, excuse me for a sec here. It's best to say that it's not equal to true because that will cover false and null. So that's one of the traps you get into. Because if you say that it's not equal to true, great. But if I said that it's equal to false, well, then that's going to ignore null. So it not equal to false could be it's true or it's null. In that case, it won't equal this comparator. And so that will be a trap that you can get caught in. A lot of the newer content, they've gone in and set the flag that they can't hold null, but that is something, especially if you've got older content, almost consistently it's going to allow a null in your logical fields, and so you have to pay attention to that and be careful on it. One of the other things we've got here is I'm going to pick a date time field because they're a little bit different. Date time fields again have your comparators. So, is it equal to today or, today's date or whatever? Is it greater than or equal? Is it less than or equal? And remember when you're doing date time that yesterday is before, so it's less than today, and tomorrow is greater than today. So I always think in terms of that context when you're trying to figure this out. So if I'm looking 30 days ago and I want something that's newer than 30 days ago, I'd have to say it's greater than or equal to whatever that expression or value is that tells me what 30 days ago is. The other thing that you have is there's a couple pre-built values. So if I say that it is, I can use these pre-built values if they happen to fit. If they don't happen to fit, then I have the option of using a prompt to pull some data in, using stored expressions or stored values or metrics. And I can use expressions to use date time math and say, 37 days ago, 2 days forward, last quarter, all kinds of interesting stuff like that we'll go into in a future webinar when we cover all the expressions and things you can do with those. For right now, I'm going to hand it over to Mike, and he's going to talk through how we would build some prompts to drive some of our searches.
Thank you, Scott. So prompts, as Scott said, prompts are great when you're doing like the start date and end dates. That's what I probably use these prompts most often for, as far as the dates are concerned. Other things you could prompt for, so if I wanted to make this a dynamic query, I could prompt for a particular team list. So if I have a validated list in the background, I may want to prompt that list for folks to know that these are the valid values that you might be looking for in this field, and you can choose one. So let's go ahead and create a new custom prompt. We're going to do a start date here. Because as Scott said, greater than or equal to, so we want our start dates are normally in the past, and our end dates could be today, it could be in the past as well. So on here, we've got the name, we've got the prompt. Name's also very important, at least to me, because prompt, it will save it as a prompt. And if I go back and try and find it, I don't remember which prompt that I did. So I'll always put a name in there that actually means something to me. And then what are we going to prompt for? So when this pops up, what are we going to ask for? What is it that I need to get from the customer so that they'll know what I'm asking for? Then we have some prompt types, and I'm going to go through these kind of quickly because we do have a sharpen the sword that's going to come out that's going to cover prompts pretty much in depth. It may be a couple of them, so we'll go through these pretty quickly. I've got text, I've got a number. So if I'm in a number field, maybe you want to do a number prompt, a date time. So this goes along with the date and time that you see at the bottom. Depending on what I want to get out of here, I may want to get just a date and a time for my start date. Or if I'm looking for incidents between a certain range, like January 1 to January 30, I may just don't want to do a date so that I can get all of those and not have to worry about putting a time in there. And probably the least used one I've seen is time, because it's just going to prompt you for time. And then the logical field, the yes, the true, false, that's all that it gives you there as well. So looking at a date, several options that we have in here. Now back in the old days, if you've been around as long as I have, this was the only option we had was, what am I going to default the value to? We normally left this blank because it never made any sense. When you selected this one 3, 4, 5 years down the road, it doesn't make any sense that the starting date is 5 years ago. However, Cherwell has come back and made this expression, which I absolutely love, and myself just discovered when we were going through these searches here as well. So expressions allow us to do a dynamic date, if you will, so that I can do a date time math. Say I want every time the starting date comes up to automatically adjust 30 days from today, so that when the default value comes up, it'll always be 30 days from today. So as Scott's putting it together, we could do a current date and time minus 30 and put the units for the days in there. Years down the road, this will still be a valid starting date because once again, it'll be 30 days back from whatever day that I'm running this prompt. So great addition to this default value that they put in here is being able to do that expression. Some of the other things that we can do in here, so we've got prompts. We also have anything that you could do normally with Cherwell, that if you've ever done any kind of fields, you've built expressions or stored functions or stored values, you can also use that in your comparator clause. So I don't just have to put, call source equals phone. I can do call source equals an expression. Maybe it's something that I wanted to derive from another field, or maybe it's something that I want to get from an aggregate, or any number of things that I may want to do from a stored value or an expression. The other things we have in here are metric values. Metrics are very useful for getting that right in time kind of value. So metrics using how many incidents that I might have open at this very moment. So being able to set up the metrics value would allow us to get, if I want this comparator clause to be greater than the amount of open tickets of 10, for instance, then we might want to use a metric value. Not necessarily use things a whole lot in our searches. I use them a lot more when I'm doing the search behind a widget on a dashboard. Stored values. So if we wanted to update a stored value, or if it's a stored value that updated from a different process, maybe it's from the scheduler, etc., and it resets our date every day to today, I might want to use that stored value to be able to bring something back. And the last pieces in here are the system functions. System functions have grown over the years. I've seen this list get bigger and bigger, and they've put in additional things in here. So maybe I'm wanting to look for, and I'm sure Scott has several of these that he's going to go over as well. Maybe I want to look for the email where it's the current user email, or I want to look for the owned by when it's the current display name. And what those mean is I'm the person that's logged in. It's going to use my email within this system function, or it's going to use my name. And that makes the search super dynamic. I can put that out there in global because whoever runs it, it's going to run it for them with their information and be able to pick up all of that stuff. So let's move on now to group clauses. We've kind of scaled over them here a little bit, and Scott already has some pre-made in here. So group clauses, if for instance we needed to find, and I'll just use status. So the best way to build a status query is to not use really the not equals. So you might want to find open incidents for example, and we normally would throw in there the status not equal to resolved, or status not equal to closed. However, the actual better way to run it from a SQL standpoint is to do an equals clause. So if I do status equals new, status equals in progress, status equals pending, and this puts a lot of things in there, but it makes the search actually run a lot better. One of the things you'll notice is the group itself is currently set to that all of these things must be true, which would never happen. You could never have the status set to all of these. So one of the things that we can do is say, okay, I want at least one of these in this group to be true. So now it changes this whole group to an or statement, and the entire group at the head of this one, up where it says incidents, all of the following are true, you'll notice all the yellow, is still an and statement. So we can nest our ands, nest our ors by using our group clauses, moving them up and down and putting them in all different places, and make our search query much, much, much more powerful than if it was just a straight and or a straight or. So let's talk a little bit now about ownership clauses. So ownership clauses are pretty much exactly as they're talking about. This is another way to make it dynamic. So if we're looking at current user, and then this drop-down list recently has been added. Has it been added to this version? I can't remember if it got it 10.2 or 10.1. Okay, it's there. So back in the old days, I'll refer to again, we were only able to use the user context within here. But now we've been able to use the customer context as well. So if the owner of the ticket or the requester of the ticket is a customer, I can do a current customer or a specific customer or a specific work group, just like I've been able to all along do a current user or a specific user or a team, a specific team. So let's look at specific user real quick, and it's exactly as it says. I can punch somebody in there and just say, I'm looking for any tickets for Claire. And the next radio buttons are any tickets for Claire where she is the owner of the record. The next one would be if we're a member of the team that owns the record. So if she's in several teams, then I might want to pull up all the tickets for all of Claire of where she's the owner of those in the team, and that team owns that ticket. And then the last one would be is if I'm a manager of that team. So I may be a member of that team, and I can see all of those tickets. And then maybe I want to go a little bit higher and just give me as a manager, where I'm a manager of the teams. I might be in 5 different teams, but only a manager of 2. This allows me to only give the search for those particular teams that own that record that I'm a manager of, and be able to see those. So back up in here, we've got our current user, which would do the same thing as specific, except it's going to be that dynamic. It's going to be whoever's logged in and use those buttons at the bottom. Current customer, specific customer, and customer workgroup are pretty much the same as what we're going through, so we're not going to go down into those, and we're going to look at just the team. So the last one in here is a specific team. So if I didn't want to get the owner of the team or the team that owns it, and I want to get all my records back, but I want to do just a specific team, I could do it, and as anybody knows, 5 different ways of doing everything in Cherwell. You could do it as an ownership clause here, or you could also do it as a comparison clause where owned by team equals, and you could put building managers in there as well. So a couple different ways to do ownership clauses, and I think we've went through everything within there. So one big thing in here is just that customer. You're now able to use the customer business object, whereas you weren't before, and it kind of changes that verbiage a little bit at the bottom, but they mean the same thing. Customer is the record requester, is part of the work group, or is a specific work group. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Scott, and he's going to go over related clauses.
Excellent, thanks, Mike. Mike mentioned doing these where it was a positive statement, and you're saying it's equal to this or equal to this. One of the reasons that sometimes you'll do an and is that in SQL, especially the way Cherwell works, is if you're doing an and clause, SQL is able to aggregate individual indexes and search across those. Sometimes when you do ORs, you'll have to craft unique custom searches that you'll notice as you're running the health check, that I've got a heavy search that I'm doing, and I've got to build a custom index for it. It's because it's usually a mixture of some ands and some ors, and so you'll kind of want to pay attention to as you're building those and how they're impacting your system as you're running your health checks over time. The next thing on the new button here is going to be your related clause. Related clause is really cool. It's also really risky, because if I put a lot of related clause searches in here, I could create an intensive query that could take a long time and might time out. Or you'll see a query too complex in the logs, and it's just because you're joining too many things together, and Cherwell basically gave up because of the timeout on the search. So related clauses are really useful because they use the relationships that are currently on the business object we're dealing with. So out of the box here on incident, I have all of these business objects that are related around customers, service, SLAs, approvals, whatever it is. And so related searches here, the clause allows us to say, find me all the incidents where blah, blah, blah matches, plus I have something in one of these related records that also meets my criteria. So let's go ahead and pick journals. In this case, I have a variety of different options here. I can say, and as I go through this, there's 2 levels to this. The first is that I can pick the contains. Is it all journals? Is there at least one journal, etc.? And those can stand on their own. So I could say there's at least one journal. And at this point, it's going to find all incidents that have at least one journal. If I add another related clause around journal, I could instead say there are no journals, or there's exactly one, there's not exactly one, there's more than one. And you're going, well, okay, it says there's at least one, and here it says, there's not exactly one, there's exactly one, there's at least one. Well, the difference is here where it has the word one, it's just fixed, it's one. Where it has the numbers though, where it's at least one, I get a selector and I can choose how many records specifically match the criteria. So that's the difference as to where it has the word spelled out versus the number presented in one of these. So that's just that, that's the base level. There's at least 8 journals. Okay, but the next thing that I can do is I can nest additional criteria under this related search. So there's at least 8 journals, and I can do any other things. I could put a comparison clause, I could put a group clause, I could do whatever. So I could say there are at least 8 journals where they were created by and I could pick somebody. So in this case, I could say Cherwell admin. So I want to find all the incidents that meet all of these other criteria, and there's at least 8 journals where the following is true. And so I can see here and create a whole nest of things here under this related clause. And so this is going to go out and do a join, and I'm going to find all the records that match that. Now this can be time intensive if you have a tremendous number in that relationship that it's going to search. So be careful on that and make sure that you don't create super complex related searches. And best practice is to limit the number of related joins here that you're using when you're doing these searches. I try to limit it to just 1 if at all possible. Once in a while you'll do 2, but if you're doing that, make sure that the record set you're searching against is very small so that you don't get yourself in a bind. And again, the secondary piece that you're putting under here, these are optional. So I can just leave it at the 8 journals, and it's no big deal. And again, anything goes under those as far as whether it is a comparator clause or group clause, etc. Combine those any way you want. The next thing that I want to show, here, let me move back up the top level so it puts it in the right place, is I want to show what a Q clause looks like. So one example as a side note, so the related clauses, a lot of times you'll see them on dashboards and stuff where you're saying, hey, go find me all of the incidents that have unread journals or journals that were created by somebody in this team in the last week because I want to know that that somebody from that team actually touched and altered or put notes in that ticket. They can be really useful, as well as if you're looking for, say, off a change request, find me all of the incidents that are tied to it that helped cause this versus incidents that are linked to it that were the initiation of the change. Because maybe you screwed up the change and had a cascade failure in your systems. All right. The last type of a search clause here is Q. And within a Q clause, we've got basically 4 criteria. Am I talking about a specific queue? Or am I talking about a user queue, queue for a specific user, or a group of queues, or just any queue? I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of customers that deal with queues. We rarely find them in use. There are perfect cases for using queues. They're really great when they fit the criteria. So a lot of people haven't actually played with these before, but when you come in here, irrelevant of which one you choose, you kind of get some basic criteria, and that is basically, where am I going to find this? Is it on the specific queue, where down here I have to choose a queue? Or is it not in this queue? Is it checked out to a specific queue? Is it not checked out from a specific queue? Or is it suspended? When I go choose some of these, then I can come over here and say, well, who's checked it out? Is it a specific person? Is it the current user? Is it any user has checked it out of this particular queue? And you can go ahead and just start stacking these up and use these any way that you want around your queues. And just make sure you know what your context is when you're using these. These can be really powerful for finding tickets that have been sitting too long, or that somebody has checked out and they're just sitting on them, they're not doing stuff with them, or you're trying to figure out what the load is around particular queues. And as you go through the user queue here, the difference is it says, instead of just here where you're picking a specific queue, now you get to pick queues that have context. Or if you go over to a group, what queue groups have I built already? And I'm going to pick one of those predefined groups of queues that I'm going to search against. So basically allows you to aggregate multiple queues into a queue group and search against those. So you don't have to list them individually. You can do one search criteria across a group of them. All right, that is predominantly the core pieces around all the search elements. And I'm going to pop over here to our secondary PowerPoint slide here and let Mike talk about some of the other things we do.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, now is the time to go ahead and put them into the questions box, and then we'll kind of take a look over them. And while you're doing that, I would like to do a selfish plug here. So we've got the Quest for Collaboration. That's every Wednesday. If you've ever been to a Cherwell user group and you've had that round table kind of experience, this is exactly what the Quest for Collaboration is. We've got customers from all over that come in. They may be answering the questions because they've been in there for many years, the same as any of us, and they just collaborate on things that they may be working on. They may be stuck on something, etc. It's a free thing. There's no sales pitches. It's just a bunch of admins getting together, putting their heads together with it and trying to come up with some resolutions if you're stuck on a problem. So if you'd like to join us, it's every Wednesday at 3 p.m. You can register at this link down here at the bottom, and then we'd love to see you out there. So we're going to check over here real quick, see what we have questions, if we have time for an additional. I do not see any questions.
There is one. We've got a couple minutes here. Somebody was asking if we're going to go over the quick search on taskbar items. It says add and date. Not quite sure what they're asking for there, but pop this back up. So when you're doing searches, like Mike had said, we had the prompts, so you could say, let's see, we'll just do current, create a date time.
I just left the screen on the taskbar. So in the task pane.
Yep. Okay, so when you're over here, let's just go ahead and go home. There's a couple things going on around this, and most of those are here under the default task pane stuff. And so, let's say common tasks. So we've got some stuff over here. You can go ahead and add in stored searches that you want to run. I think this is what you're asking for. If not, we can unmute and you can just ask specifically what you're looking for. But if I want to add stuff to the task pane over here, like under common tasks, or if I'm on an incident specifically, and I'll show you where that is as well here in just a sec. I was editing common tasks here, so I could add in a stored search. So like maybe find all of the incidents for this year. And so if I wanted to add in, I'm not in instance right now, but we'll just say, let's see, what's my context? So I'm in agreement. Let's go over here to incident. And we'll just say that I want to put in all tickets for this year. Then I could just say everything that's created. Let's say the created day is greater than or equal to, in this case, I probably would do an expression. And when I'm doing my date time expressions that I'm just using around, I always put them in the none context. So that would be this year. And I probably do like a date time where I'm using current date time. And this year, actually, let's see. I did that probably poorly. Is there this year? Yeah, so in within the last year, that's the lazy way for that one. And then that is now available. I don't remember what I called it. There we go. So now it's going to be on the sidebar for everything because I did it within common tasks. But if I were to go into a blueprint, I could edit incident itself and come over to actions. I can come over to the context.
Scott.
Okay. So 3 dots. Here. Okay. So quick search, let's go ahead and pin this. When I'm doing quick search and I can choose my business object, I'll just wander through this, it's no big deal. You have a couple choices here and it's going to remember what you choose. So these are predefined. The other thing you have to notice over here is should it search children, so related records, as well as should it search attachments that are a part of the attachment manager where they've got the correct indexing on indexing tools on IIS loaded, as well as my search. If I don't want to go with one of the predefined though, then my best bet is to come over here and click the advanced editor and start building a custom search where I define what the date time parameters are. So
I think the question is, how do you add this year as an example? So add this year to the drop-down list, I'm assuming. So when you're in that ... how can I add something into this, I'm guessing is the question.
Gotcha. You cannot. These are predefined. These are not editable. And so within the last year, that's going to be the current year. Whereas previous year would be the year before.
Yeah, unfortunately this year, because this year would be anything from January 1, 2021. So within the last 1 year, it's going to be 365 days from today.
Yeah. So unfortunately, you cannot get that specific and alter this setting. These are defined by the system. I wish you could. That would be really nice. So you're almost always going to, yeah, be a great thing for the IHS. Otherwise, you're going to drop back here and you're going to go ahead and build a custom one if you need to. So I usually will have a lot of pre-built date time expressions in the none context I can grab and use and quickly run through them.
We've got a couple more questions to come in. So do search options / configuration affect Cherwell performance?
Not significantly, because when you're over here, you're just telling Cherwell whether it's doing and or ors when you're over in the system settings. It's not going to significantly affect how quickly it searches, because you're using the SQL search engine and it's already optimized for searches. The thing that really kills you is, what am I searching against, and do I already have indexes? And if the things that I'm pulling back regularly, I've got an index for, say, let's say I'm looking for status. So I do a search around status. And whenever I bring that back, I'm saying, stuff that is closed, but I only want to find stuff that's closed within a certain date time. In that case, then I would build a custom index that says my index is around status, but I'm also going to include the closed date time as part of the index, not part of the indexed pieces, but as an include column, so that I can then let Cherwell act on the data that's part of the index without actually having to pull the records themselves to query for that stored value. So that's where blending your indexes and making sure that they're designed correctly for the types of searches that you're running regularly will directly affect your search results and how quickly they occur. So I'm consistently looking back and saying, well, what kind of searches am I building on my dashboards? What kind of searches are my users using regularly? And trying to tailor my indexes and tweak some of my searches. Because the one thing that I did forget to mention is that Cherwell does Boolean type searches. So if I come up here, I'll just grab a quick search here. We'll just grab this one. Cherwell does Boolean searching, which means that you want to search big boulders to small rocks to sand, kind of a thing, in the sense that the first thing you put in your search query should be the thing that could limit your result set as rapidly as possible, so they can quickly rule out other records that it's going to return and that it's going to filter on. So you'll find that any criteria that allows you to limit that search set as quickly as possible, put that towards the top of the search and start designing the order of your search so that you get to the most granular pieces at the bottom, and that will speed up your search results as well.
So another question, we've got two more here, try to fit them in here real quick. Can I save a specific grid view for my specific search? And the answer to that one is, it's going to use whatever grid for the business object that you currently have saved. And what I mean by that is, if you're looking at the default grid, it's going to be the default grid. If you've got your own grid that you've set up, it's going to be that grid that you've set up. So you can't do a grid by a specific search. You can do the sorts, but you can't set the grid up to be by a specific search. And then the last one was within CMDB, is it a way to search within upstream, downstream relationships? And I believe you covered that with relationship searching, right? The relationship clause, because I believe there's a relationship within the CMDB for upstream and downstream. So if you use the clause for the related search clause within it, you should be able to pick either upstream or downstream and then add your criteria to that within the search.
Right, so two things. So the thing that Mike was talking about with on the, if I come up here, so as a side note, I just pulled up CMDB. It is a search result, so I can actually edit this current search, and then I can start putting criteria in here, and I can put in related clauses. And like Mike said, is it upstream? Is it downstream? Or is it one of the related CIs? So I can do that. The search result, and you could do that through normal search too, but if you end up going through CMDB, there's no direct way to do it without just editing the current search. The other, as far as the grid that's displayed, go to the ideation station, because there is an idea they're asking them to allow us on stored searches to
Choose a grid.
define the grid that's used to present the results. So please, I don't remember if that's mine or if that was Aiden's, but it's in there, and it has a lot of votes on it. So please add more and let them know that that's important.
All right, well, I
Anything
think
else?
we've covered all of the questions. Again, join us for the quest for collaboration. Any of these questions that could have been answered there as well. If you come up with anything like that, come see us on Wednesday and we'll get answers for you. If not, we thank you for visiting. We thank you for joining us today in our webinar. And I think Tabitha has a couple of things left.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank everybody again. And then I had sent out, a lot of you had seen previous emails just for topic suggestions on different technical deep dives that you'd like to see. So don't be afraid to email me back and let me know what you'd like to see from our consultants, and we'll make sure to get it on the map for you guys. So thank you, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.